Hello, everyone. It's Shane Kanto, your Wasteland Reviewer, and welcome to Lost in the Wasteland, my weekly show where I get to interview somebody and get a little bit of better perspective on their perspective on movies. And I have a frequent flyer here, Heath Lynch, back here, and we're doing his, I believe, first film interview here for his curriculum, and we're going to be talking about 12 Angry Men, which, yes,
Yay.
it's 12 men in a room, 2 hours. And
No,
it's
hour and a half. It's brilliant.
hour and a half, and you know what? I can't look away. And
Nope,
we're
not
going
for a
to talk
second.
about how great this movie is. And Heath, thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
And you know the drill. If you'd like to shamelessly plug anything for my lovely audience here, and then we'll get to the questions.
Sure. Yeah, you can find me on Letterboxd at the one Heath Bar or Heath Lynch. Search either one. I'm also on websites like SiftPop or Shortboxed. Search, and you'll probably find me somewhere.
There you go. And 12 Angry Men, directed by Sidney Lumet, has a 9.0 on IMDb. One of the highest rated films ever on the site. And this is indeed about 12 jurors in a room trying to figure out the fate of a young man. And we have the likes of Henry Fonda, Lee J. Cobb, Martin Balsam, John Fiedler, E.G. Marshall, and Jack Warden's always the one that gets me. I'm just like, oh my God, he's young.
He's so young.
So young.
Yeah.
And Ed Begley, uh, as well in this. And quick question, Heath, have you seen the remake?
No, I kind of just don't want to. I no. I have seen this one. I've seen it several many thousand hundred tens of dozens of times. I don't know what the count is, but I this one's perfect. This is a masterpiece, and I'm good with just this.
I feel because like I saw the remake first actually because I watched it in a class and in school.
Weird that they would show the remake before the original in a
I guess they
constructive
were
film
thinking, well,
course.
I'll keep these high schoolers' attention better if I show them something that's not black and white because that's how a lot of people.
Even that's weird to me because like this movie gets tense within like 5 minutes. Like you don't have to wait long to like start
Well,
getting like anxiety.
but I think one of the main draws of the remake is the cast. Because like you have Jack Lemmon, George C. Scott, you have Courtney B. Vance, Tony Danza, James Gandolfini, William Peterson, Edward James Olmos. Like there's
Mhm.
a lot of really great actors in it, like this one. So like I feel like that's the main draw of it is seeing all those actors interacting. But here we're here to talk about the original. And Heath, why did you pick this for your film curriculum?
Uh Man, I don't know if I could succinct it into just one sentence, let alone even like a paragraph. I guess what I would like to say is one thing that is sorely mismanaged, and I think mismanaged is the proper word in a lot of films, is stakes and tension.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie has all the stakes in the world and an insane amount of tension and suspense. And it's just people talking in a room for
Yeah.
about 90, 93, 95 minutes, somewhere in there. 97 minutes if you count credits. And man, that is nuts. That is
Yeah.
gnarly that you can do that in most movies, even like high intense action movies with gunfights, and like they can't even do what this movie does. And this movie did it almost 65 years ago. I mean, so it's and again, that's just like the main thing, but you could also say the performances,
Yeah.
script writing, how to shoot a single location movie and make it compelling,
Yeah.
um, uh, different types of character archetypes and how to act and perform them, how to shoot from a directing perspective and frame a single location movie and try to get the most out of your ensemble cast. Brilliant cinematography, succinct editing. Like this movie has it all. There's a reason why it's considered, just to preface for those who aren't familiar with this movie or don't know that much about it, this movie is literally it's about a jury. That's all it
Yep.
is. the movie's titled 12 Angry Men. The movie opens with them being dismissed from a courtroom because they just finished the end of a 6-day jury trial, and it was a murder case. And the judge dismisses them. They go to the jury's quarters. They're locked in, and they have to deliberate the facts of the case to determine whether this individual is guilty or not guilty in regards to first-degree premeditated murder. And that's it. That's the movie.
Yep.
The movie ends with them finally coming to a decision. I won't say what decision they come to, but it comes to they finally reach a unanimous, conclusive decision, and then they walk out of the room, and then it ends. Like that.
Yep.
So that's it. I think there's a grand total of like 3 minutes. That's not just these 12 men and no one else, by the way, just these 12 men in a jury room. And when we say this is one of the greatest of all time, like you said, this is a 9.0 on IMDb. I'm not sure what it is on their top movie list. Oh, it's the number 5 movie ever. I just looked it up. The number 5 movie of all time. On Letterboxd, this has a 4.5 rating out of 5. It is the number 8 movie of all time. If we wanted to go to AFI, the American Film Institute, it is not on one list or on 2. It is on many. Out of the top 100 movies ever, it is nominated, which I think that's weird that it's not just on the list. But on top for courtroom dramas, it's number 2 ever. When they did re-rank the top movies, it did make the list. It was number 87 all time. It's the number 28 hero of all time for juror number 8. It's the number 88 film all time for thrillers. Like, this just has a little bit of everything. And so that's the kind of level of magnitude we're talking about. Like, this movie was accredited when it came out and acclaimed. It was nominated for Best Picture at the Oscars, nominated for Best Director, Best Adapted Screenplay, because I'm pretty sure it's based off a play, if I remember correctly. And it's just grown in legacy and respect ever since, for so many reasons. But so I think those are kind of a little bit of what the movie is, its history, its legacy, and why I would consider it so great and worthy of study.
There you go. Now, a very important question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Did he do it?
Did what?
Did he do it?
I don't know. I actually completely agree with your number 8 here. I don't know whether he did it or not. All I know is that there is compelling evidence to say that we can't prove that he did it. And I think that's one thing. If there's one thing this movie does really great, is it reiterates over and over, this isn't about guilty or innocent. This is about guilty or not guilty, which are two very distinct different things.
Yep.
You could be found not guilty while still not being innocent. That's just saying, in this specific trial, with this evidence that we were shown, there's not enough compelling, direct, confirmable evidence to say without a shadow of a doubt that this person's guilty. And I think juror number 8 says that at many points. Like, I don't know if he's guilty or not. He may well be. He even says at one point, we may be letting a murderer walk free. But like, from what we're seeing here, this isn't enough for me to look beyond a reasonable doubt. Like, I have reasonable doubt. I will say that that does lead to one moment in the movie where they slip, and I think it's the one weakness of the film. It's still a 5-star film for me, to be clear, but at one point they do accidentally say innocent instead of not guilty in the screenplay and in the movie, and I think that's a mistake, because throughout the whole movie they reiterate that it's about not guilty, not innocent, which are two different things. But at one point, when because they do so many revotes throughout the movie of like where the jury stands at any given time, and at one point they say, okay, this many think he's innocent and this many think he's guilty, and I think that was a mistake. They should have caught that in editing. But other than that, I don't know. I would like to think that he is innocent. I think his story, his alibi, mixed with the facts that were laid out by the jury and the arguments made by juror number 8 and others, gives me that reasonable amount of doubt that I could say, yeah, We can't conclusively say it's him, especially when they're like the movie theater one is the one that always when they're like, oh, couldn't you remember everything? Well, if someone's showing me that my dad just died, I don't give a about what happened an hour ago.
Yeah.
That's the last thing on my mind, like, and I there's a lot there that is worth unpacking. A couple things that I do want to unpack, and I'm just going to kind of tee off here, if you don't mind. One thing that I love about this movie is no one has a name. It is just juror number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, all the way through 12. I think that is fascinatingly interesting and such a smart script writing decision. And it's actually not until after the verdict is handed in that we learn some characters' names. And even when I say some, I mean just a couple. It's just 2 characters, and we only learn their last name at that. And then they just are like, oh, okay, well, nice to have met you. And then they walk away from each other. Yeah. Because I think that removing these names helps to illustrate the main point and the main theme of the film. And the main theme of the film, beyond Jesus Christ, can you make an audience sweat buckets for an hour and a half because they're going to just own you with anxiety. The main theme of the film, to me, has always been about prejudice. Our prejudices in our everyday life that we attribute to things even when we don't even realize that we're doing it. And how do we get beyond those prejudices to examine truth and facts and what those truths and facts mean and how they affect people in the real world. And I'm not even talking the obvious ones that you're going to see, like the most obvious. Blunt force in your face prejudice throughout the whole movie. He is a racist, and they never really say what race the person on trial is, but we do get to see him for a second. I believe he's Hispanic. I don't remember, but it's irrelevant what it is. And then again, that in and of itself is also intentional within the screenplay. They don't really clarify what his race is. Had we not even seen that person for he's only in the frame for like 5 seconds, we would never even know. And that's kind of the point. It doesn't matter what race this person is. It's the fact that this guy holds a prejudice because he's a different race. And there's a brilliant scene where everyone just, as this guy starts to go off on a racist tangent, everyone just gets up from the table and walks away from him and shuns him. And nowadays, some people would say that that's cancel culture. I would argue that that's just consequences. that's how life works.
That's a bunch of family members just being like, well, I'm not talking to you anymore.
Yeah, exactly. So this guy goes on a racist tangent. All these people walk away from him to the point that he realizes no one is on his side, and he starts to see himself for the disgusting person that everyone else sees him as, and he starts to realize, I should just shut up now. Yeah. I'm not helping anything, and I've completely lost sight of the facts myself because all I care about is that this guy's not my race. And after that, Henry Fonda plays juror number 8, who is the hero of the film, so to speak. Not so to speak, directly. He is the hero. And he gives a speech, and I'm going to read it here verbatim. Because again, although this is the most direct version of the prejudice theme throughout the film, it applies to the whole thing. So hold on one second. All right, juror number 8. This is right after this racist was shunned by everyone. It's always difficult to keep personal prejudice out of a thing like this, and wherever you run into it, prejudice always obscures the truth. I don't really know what the truth is. I don't suppose anybody will ever really know. 9 of us now seem to feel that the defendant is innocent. That's where they say the line innocent. And again, it should have been not guilty. But we're just gambling on probabilities. We may be wrong. We may be trying to let a guilty man go free. I don't know. Nobody really can. But we have a reasonable doubt. And that's something that's very valuable in our system. No jury can declare a man guilty unless it's sure. Mm-hmm. And the whole thing is just prejudice. And really, when you take a step back, again, he's the obvious one for the racism. That's the easiest one to pick up on. But juror number 4 is prejudice because this guy can't remember the movie he saw. and who was in the movie. This is the guy who has glasses, and he's incredibly analytical throughout the whole process. And his prejudice is intelligence. He can't comprehend that someone could be that stupid in his eyes, quote unquote stupid. Yeah. That someone could. How could you not remember that? I would remember that, and then very clearly, juror number 8 gets him to illustrate that. Yeah, you can't even remember a movie you saw, and you just saw this movie 4 days ago, and you weren't even under emotional stress of seeing your dead father in front of you lying on the floor. Another one that's a great example of prejudice is juror number 3, who is really condemning this guy because of the father-son dynamic and how he is projecting his failed relationship with his son onto this potential murderer, that he sees this man as, oh, my son has cut me out of his life and my relationship with him is irrevocably damaged. And this bratty, stupid young kid, this younger generation, they're just the same. And he, he got sick of his father too, and he just went one step further and killed him, when really none of the facts prove definitively that he killed this man, but he just wanted that to be the case so bad. Another guy, Jack Warden of all people, he's just like, his prejudice was he just didn't want to be a part of it. He wanted to go to a Yankees game. Like he just didn't care. Or another guy who's in advertisement and is a salesman. He thinks everything's a sales pitch. He can't quantify that not being the case. And it's just so brilliant how the movie interweaves this theme on literally every single jury member. Even juror number 8, Henry Fonda, our hero, his prejudice is, I can't imagine a world where we're just going to unanimously say, oh yeah, he's wrong.
Yeah.
He even says that at the beginning when he's the singular person saying not guilty. He's like, yeah, no, I just want to disagree because I want to disagree. I just don't think it's I think he's almost even convincing himself throughout the movie, at least through the first 20 minutes. I think by about 15-20 minutes in, he's firmly in the not guilty camp. But at first, I think he's just trying to convince himself that he might not be guilty, because his stubbornness is the only, that was his prejudice. He's like, no, I don't want to conform to you guys. I don't want to just give you that satisfaction. So I'm going to say no anyway, and it's just so smart in that regard. Like, such layered theme work that's perfect.
Absolutely. And the whole entire start of it is just like, how could we just condemn this kid without even thinking about it? And that's exactly what was happening. Now, you hit on a lot of the thematic takeaways, and especially in terms of like bias and prejudice. Why do you think it's so important that Henry Fonda was cast as juror number 8?
Like a specific reason that he was cast?
I guess in terms of like the context of when this film came out, why is that so significant that he was the hero of this story?
I don't know. I guess I actually haven't even really thought of that myself. I mean, I know that he had already had quite a distinguished career himself, all the way back to like the 30s and 40s. He famously starred in The Grapes of Wrath. He was in Once Upon a Time in the West, although that was after this.
Which I know that was such a significant undertaking for him because he was a villain. Mm-hmm. And before that, he was like America's hero.
Yeah. Even right before his death in at the early 80s, he did On Golden Pond with his daughter.
Yep.
Jane Fonda, where he's kind of the pseudo villain in that one too, is the curmudgeon-y kind of dad grandpa. But I guess there's just something about him who especially, and this isn't so much the case now, Hollywood doesn't really do this, but there are archetypes that Hollywood used to do in the golden age. Mm-hmm. And one of those archetypes was the American hero. Yep. And if I had to justify or give one reason, I would give this, that Fonda was a American hero archetype kind of character. He was generally always a good guy, generally had a lot of courage, bravado to him, And that kind of fits in line with juror number 8. So if anyone could pull off this character, he wasn't an old man by this point, but he was in his 50s. You
Yeah.
know, he'd seen a decent chunk of life. He had experiences. He had maturity. He had wisdom. And so he could take that wisdom, that knowledge and experience, and mix it with his personality type in Hollywood of just being an American hero archetype. And it seems like, yeah, if anyone can overcome those odds of being the one person in a jury of 12 who wants to fight back against the system, Fonda could do it. And I think that's probably why he would be cast.
And that's definitely true because he was that to American audiences. And that's why I find it so fascinating with his casting in Once Upon a Time in the West, and why he made sure they didn't like put in lenses and stuff like that and kept his striking blue eyes, because all of that just subverted the fact that he was a piece of crap in that movie. And here he's the one trying to stand up for justice. And obviously he's a big standout from this film, but who do you feel like are some of the main standout performances for you from this film?
Well, I actually have those listed. So these are, and again, I want to say this. I believe all 12 actors are doing a phenomenal job.
Yeah.
There's not a single performance here that I do not like, but there are some that stand above.
Yeah.
Obviously, Henry Fonda is juror number 8. Like, yes, perfect. Like one of the most brilliant performances that you could see. And then I go to the saying of a hero is only as good as his villains. Like you hear that with comic book movies, especially. Like Batman's only as strong as the Riddler, or as the Joker. You know, the people who are confrontational to him are the people that I think are doing some of the best work.
Yeah.
Not that the people that take his side aren't, like juror number 9, the older gentleman, Joseph Sweeney. Like he feels like such a kind-hearted soul, has such a righteous sense of morality to him, and again, a great performance. All of these guys, but in particular, it's juror number 3, and I'll save him for last, but we'll get back to him. Juror number 4, E.G. Marshall. This is again the analytical with the glasses. I think his very direct performance, almost entirely void of emotion. That's how analytical he is. I love the part where he's like, yeah, I don't sweat. But then later, he's pressured by Henry Fonda and he starts sweating.
Yeah.
I think he's doing a great work, especially I love the way when they're talking about glasses and what it means to have those imprints of glasses. And he slowly realizes, oh crap, I'm losing this argument. And he puts his own glasses back on. It's just so sharp. Jack Warden, again, for the time, so incredibly young, but I love him here as the smarmy Yankees fan who is just pissed off that there's Baltimore Orioles fan is in the jury room with him, and he can't even stand it throughout the whole movie. He's just like, calm down, Baltimore, as he's referring to this other guy, which I think is great because the Baltimore Orioles used to be the St. Louis Browns, and I'm from St. Louis. They only moved to Baltimore like 4 years before this movie came out. But I think Jack is great. His kind of laissez-faire, like, I don't give a crap. This is all stupid. Let's go get a beer. Let's go watch the Yanks. His attitude, his bravado is so hilarious to me. Again, we already went over Fonda. And then juror number 10, Ed Begley. This is the racist. I think is doing a tremendous job. Again, you hate this character. I hate this guy so much. But to me, that's a showcasing of good acting. If I can hate you that much, if you're that good of a wrestling heel in that moment, that means you're doing the job right.
Yeah.
And when he gives that speech, that racist rant, and everyone turns his back on him, like, I hate him so much in that moment. But at the same time, not only does he make me hate him, I wouldn't say he makes me empathize. I don't know if that's the wrong word, but I almost feel sorry for him when he starts to deflate. And you can hear it in his 100%. Voice. You can see it in his body language, where he just folds and he realizes he's such a weakling and such a coward, and he stands for nothing. and he just like collapses under the weight of his own racism, and he walks and slumps away and like goes to another table entirely, and he's there the rest of the movie. He never returns to sit with the rest of the jury.
Yeah.
And I think it's brilliant, and he's doing such a great job throughout this. But the other role that I think is the best one outside of Fonda, is I said earlier, is jury number 3, and that's Lee J. Cobb.
Yeah.
Who I would imagine is most people's favorite performance outside of Fonda. This is, we'll call him the holdout. He's the final adversary, the final person in the way of Fonda, the last person to convince. And he is showing so much anger and frustration throughout this whole movie, and you don't really get the sense of why. But when you go back and watch it on rewatch, there are seeds, there's inklings where we hear him talk about his son, and we see a picture, and we hear him talking about the youth and how parents aren't respected. And then in this final moment where he just breaks down, emotionally breaks down, as like a wave of revelation hits him that he's lost his son. And not only has he lost his son, the last thing he has of his son is this picture of him. And in a fit of rage and anger, which he's already been predisposed throughout the movie to show that he can snap on a dime. He has a very short fuse, and he's not good at controlling his anger. In a fit of rage, he tore up that one last picture of his son, and he hates himself for it. In that moment, he is everything that in the world that he despises. He's become, and he can see himself as the very reason why his son doesn't talk to him anymore, and he can't stand himself for it. It's so tragic. But his performance throughout the whole movie, the confrontations he has with Fonda and everyone else, his outbursts, his yelling, his crying, his pleading, I think he is tremendous throughout this film.
Absolutely. And it's just, there's so much passion there.
Yeah.
And so much aggression, and it just, that blow off at the end is impressive. And especially like Johnny Friendly over here from On the Waterfront.
Yeah.
He has 2 pretty great villainous roles under his belt, and just this cast is stacked from top to bottom. Now, thinking about one other thing that I wanted to bring up in terms of like themes and metaphors and stuff like that.
Sure.
What do you think the significance of the heat and the rain are in this film?
So for me, the heat has always been just the definition of anger, that when we reach our boiling point, sometimes it doesn't take much to snap. And that kind of goes in line with, there's a part of the movie, speaking of juror number 3, where they're convinced that no one would ever say, I'm going to kill you, unless they meant it. And juror number 8's like, what are you talking about? People say that all the time. Like, I'm going to kill you. No one means that. Just because you say that doesn't mean, oh, yep, they're clearly going to murder someone.
Yeah.
Literally everyone at some point in their life has told someone they're going to kill them. That doesn't mean it's going to happen. And then as the heat is boiling, the temperature is sweltering, people are getting more and more riled up, the anger is rising within the room. We even get this point where juror number 3 says, I'm going to kill you.
Yep.
And then juror number 8 just like stares him down and says, did you mean it? Like, totally played him.
Yep.
Conned him into that moment. And I think the heat is all about that. And also, if you go back and watch it, I'm not entirely sure it syncs up perfectly, but it's pretty clear as well that the heat is rising as the aggression is rising, and the anger towards the person on trial is rising, and the people that want him to be guilty. The rain starts to fall as it starts to tip the other way, and people are cooling off, and more people are starting to think, no, he might not be guilty. Again, not that he's innocent, but just he might not be guilty. And that's when the scales start to tip, the seesaw starts to go the other way, and that's when the rain starts falling and people start cooling off, kind of start thinking with a more level head. It's literally a washing away of their prejudices as the time goes by.
And it's really powerful. There's so many so many layers to this film that is just
Mhm.
really impressive. And I think one of the most important things is it's hard to adapt a play into a film without it just feeling like a play.
Yeah.
How do you feel like Lumet's able to make this film feel more
And
cinematic?
that's something I definitely wanted to talk about. So it is astounding that Lumet can do this because he has some films before this, but nothing was over an hour, nothing over 60 minutes. So you could make an argument that this is his first feature length film
Mhm.
ever. And for your first feature length film ever to go down as one of the greatest films of all time, depending on what website you go to, the top 100, if not top 10 movies ever made, a best picture nominated film, you're nominated for best director, clearly you're doing something right. This movie is cinematic. The
Yeah.
way that he frames the people in this room, the way he moves the camera, and this is the big part, is the restraint that he has in the editing process, how he lets the camera linger. There's
Mhm.
no hyperkinetic cutting that's going on throughout this whole movie. That scene I was talking about earlier, where juror number 10 gives the racist rant and people start walking away from the table, that's all one take.
Yep.
That's there's nothing there other than the weight of that scene. And it's just, it starts zoomed in on juror number 10 as he's doing the rant. We zoom out and we see that we're in the one of the corners of the room, and we just see one at a time someone get up and walk away from the table, turn their back, turn their shoulder, sit down somewhere else, or just literally stand up against a wall because they just don't want to be around that man. And the whole scene probably takes, I don't know, 3 minutes without a single cut.
Yep.
And there's actually several like that. And what's really sharp is when it does need a definitive, bold statement, a cut to someone's facial reactions. He'll cut and get right in someone's face. The framing
Yep.
is that's all you see is someone's face, like the shock or the anger or the appalling sense of like, how dare you? Like, you see every ounce of that on someone's face. It's really says something to me as well that he chose to, along with the cinematographer, who I believe was Boris Kaufman, who also did On the Waterfront. They decided to do this in black and white.
Yep.
This is 1957. Color's been around for a long time. They didn't have to do this. It was a distinct choice. And I think that choice was made to kind of put into perspective of these old school perspectives and how hard it is to show progress and to fight against that, and also to show that like everyone's on an even playing field here. No one's more important than the other. There's a reason these characters don't even have names. They're just juror number, whatever. Um, so we're not going to show flashy colors. We're not going to care about whose suit looks nicer than someone else's. This is a character drama in the most unique sense. And that's all we want you to focus on. And what's even better is not only did they make that decision for logical reasons, the cinematography is still incredibly sharp.
Yeah.
This movie is gorgeous. Some of the way they use shadow as the night goes on and the lights start to fade on the outside, so they have to turn on lights inside the room, and they finally get this fan working and hearing this fan spinning and casting shadow on people's faces or whatever. It's just so well done. So I think Sidney's making a lot of smart choices. He's clearly getting the most out of his cast, which is something I think is underrated. I think a lot of people forget that when they look at a performance. They're like, oh, so-and-so rocked in this movie. They're 100% awesome and they deserve all the accolades. And yes, they absolutely deserve accolades. But like, some amount of that praise has to go to the director. Just like if someone gives a bad performance, I'm not reticent to be like, oh yeah, that's all on that actor. Like the director approved that. The director got that performance out of
do
them.
Another take?
Yeah, like the director decided not to do more takes. The director decided that was good enough. And for Sidney to get all of this energy, emotion, and empathy from this cast is outstanding. Again, his first feature film. So between his framing, his movement of the camera throughout this room, making a single location look grand in scale while also looking incredibly claustrophobic, I think he does tremendous work here.
Absolutely. And I think one thing that really sticks out to me is he's challenging his actors with those really high close-up shots because in a play, you just play big and
Yeah,
people can't see you up close. You could see
intentionally.
you could see every single flaw in a performance when a camera's up in your face like that. And that's why this whole entire cast just rises to the occasion because
Yep.
everybody's pulling their weight.
And again, that's when I go back to someone like Lee J. Cobb, who like they zoom in on his face so much because he is the central antagonist by the end of the movie, and you see every lip quiver, you see every eyebrow twitch, like you see his anger, you see his sorrow, and it's brilliant. It's brilliant framing and work of the camera on the part of the director, and it is a brilliant performance from Cobb.
I know I've obviously gotten to ask some questions and you've hit on a lot of my other points as well. And I feel like the biggest thing to talk about is why does this stand the test of time? Why is this a film that's in like top 10 lists of all time? Why is that?
I think that goes back to two things. One, and I slightly touched on this earlier, which is the editing and the runtime. This is 97 minutes with credits. Without credits, you're looking at 90, 93 minutes, 95 minutes. The fact that most movies that are of dramatic caliber in this day and age are 2.5 to 3 hours long. That's like the standard. That's like the norm.
Sure, becoming
that.
that.
And that drives me nuts. Now, I'm not saying that a movie can't have that or that a movie is worse for that. That's not what I'm saying at all. In fact, if you're going to use that time wisely, I'm down. Make a movie as long as you need. One of my favorite movies of all time, in my top 10 of all time, is Lord of the Rings, The Return of the King. And every time I watch that movie, I'm watching the extended cut that's almost 5 hours long. So, like, I have no problem with a lengthy film if you're using that time wisely. On the flip side of that, I think it shows a lot of control and understanding of pacing if you can still deliver that much excitement, anxiety, tension, whatever you want to call it, palpable drama, and you can do it in 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Holy crap. The fact that I can throw this on and be done in an hour and a half, it is huge. Because, and here's another thing, as the generations roll by and our attention spans get shorter and shorter, and we're constantly distracted by things on YouTube, or people are doing stuff on TikTok or whatever, and the average attention span is like 30 seconds. That's an even more precious commodity, the fact that this is 90 minutes long. Because even myself, again, who likes some longer movies, man, it can be really hard to not like, all right, I'll just look at my phone for 30 seconds or check the clock. What time is it? I never do that with this movie. Like, you're in and you're out. Like, it's done before you even note it. And that goes back to the main reason why this has stood the test of time, because this is a roller coaster. It grabs you literally within the first 3 minutes. This starts building tension and it never lets go. And that's the main reason why I would recommend this. And I think this should be studied and should be in educational courses. If you want to understand tension, suspense, what it means to be a thriller, this is the movie to watch, because this movie accomplishes so much and delivers so much palpable anxiety that is like a positive anxiety. It's a positive emotion. You feel vindicated and gratification by the end of this film because of the experience that you went through. And it does it the whole movie, and it does it without a gunfight. No one dies. No one's cursing. There's no alcohol. There's no drugs. These are crutches. I say crutches. Some films and stories genuinely need these elements, but a lot of films use these elements as crutches in a film to stimulate drama. This film has none of that. The most dramatic thing that happens in this film is someone puts a knife on a table, and it's the exhibit from the trial. Like, oh, this is the knife they murdered him with, and look, I have a knife that looks just like it. That's it. That's the most exciting thing that happens in this movie. Someone puts it, or like, you can make an argument up. A guy limped across the room and timed himself. It took 41 seconds for him to limp. Like, that's it. That's our action. It's the guy walks slowly with a slumped leg. He looks like he's auditioning for a zombie film. like,
Yeah.
like, so the fact that this movie can just build and build and build, like I would put it on par with something like The Shining. Now, The Shining has way more going for it that's going to really ratchet things up, like the twins, the blood elevator, and a whole bunch of other things. But for the most part, that movie is just watching Jack Nicholson lose his mind slowly.
Yep.
And your anxiety comes from, oh, something bad's going to happen. I don't know what, but this guy's clearly losing it. And the more and more time goes by, the worse and worse things are going to get, the more and more unsafe it is for his wife and his son. And you just know that, you feel that energy. Or something like Whiplash, a more modern movie, where Whiplash is like, yeah, I don't know. And again, that one has moments too where clearly it's supposed to knock you on your ass, and like when he throws a cymbal at his head, or whatever, or the car accident. But for the most part, it's just, here's this guy, he wants to be the best drummer in the world, and he's pushing himself as hard as he can, and it's still not good enough, and he's being psychologically and sometimes physically beaten down. I don't know where this is going to go, but it's probably not going to be good. This movie accomplishes that without even doing anything close to that. It's literally just people talking in a room, and you will still feel that. I don't know where this is going, but I can't look away. I can't miss a single thing. I want to know every single point of evidence. I want to know every single perspective of these jurors, where they think, why they think what they think, and where is this going? Because for all I know, someone could pick up that knife and stab someone, and it almost feels like it's going to happen at one point in the movie.
Yeah.
It doesn't, but like, that's what it feels like. It feels like these men might kill each other over this. And it's crazy, and it's so powerful.
They are 12 angry men.
Yeah, they really
there you
are.
Go. I think, and just in summation for everyone, this is timeless. Whether it's technically, thematically, narratively, it just, you could plug this in any time and it's still gonna hit.
Yeah.
Honestly,
And I think that's also a big part of it, is because you go to this theme of like rejecting prejudice and trying to understand people, trust people, respect people, talk to people for who they are, or just for the truth or for facts, and set prejudice aside. That will always be a relevant theme throughout the history of time. That's never going away, especially when you look at where we are in the world today, things that are happening in the world, crimes, court cases, things you hear about in the news, read about online, where these things are still applicable. People still feel this way about a lot of things, and it can break my soul sometimes seeing things, but this movie will never not be relevant because of that, because there will always be racist people. There will always be people that have family issues. There will always be people that come from impoverished neighborhoods. That, like, this is never going away. So because these are systemic things that are not ever going to change, the message of this movie will always be relevant.
Absolutely. And that's a wrap here. All my questions here for Heath on 12 Angry Men. And if you haven't watched this, you better go watch this.
Because please watch this movie. It's required material.
This is required
material. You need to watch this, or you don't get an A.
There you go. Not in this class.
Yes.
But Heath, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Shane.
And thank all of you out there for always tuning in and supporting your Wasteland Reviewer.